So if you're not from the neighborhood, welcome to Ward 13. If you are from the neighborhood, I have regular monthly ward meetings in this room on the second Wednesday of every single month. Been doing it every month since getting sworn in January of 2022. So stop by at 6 o'clock. It was last Wednesday, but second Wednesday of each month, we're in here at 6. Take your questions, concerns, whatever's going on in the neighborhood. I usually bring in a special guest speaker every month too to go over different things. We'll have the recreational be here, or county senior services, or we've had the Cleveland Film Commission come out to talk about how you can get in the movies. So it's a different speaker every month, but tonight we have a special presentation about the process for drawing maps. I can set this conversation up with a few simple facts that are not up for dispute. This is just the way the world is. In 2008, voters in Cleveland passed a charter amendment. The charter is like the Constitution of the city of Cleveland. We in City Council have to follow what's in the charter, and the voters passed a charter amendment that changes the way we apportion wards. Essentially, it requires us to have roughly equal representation per ward, and we have to use the decennial census, which happens every 10 years, to make sure that those wards are roughly, I don't know. So anyway, the 2020 census numbers were not back in time for the 2021 election. They weren't certified in time, but they did get certified in 2022. So now we have to take those numbers and redraw the wards, because Cleveland's population came in officially at 372,000 and some odd number. That was 3,000 shy of the 375,000 threshold, which means that we have to remove 2 wards from the current map. We're going to have our speakers here tonight who are demographers and population experts and have worked in this field for a long time, know a lot about this. Come up here and they're going to talk to you about the process and then get some input from you. I'll take care of this if you want to take over the mic.
Okay, here I go.
Who should I introduce first?
The consulting team.
Okay.
All right.
The consulting team is Mr. Kent Whitley.
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Mark Salling.
Mark Salling. Dr. Mark Salling. And Mr. Bob Dykes.
Correct.
So that's Whitley, Salling, Dykes. Okay? And I think you're going to go?
Yes.
All right. Why don't we just, let's just rotate.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for spending your valuable time coming out to Ward 13 community meeting. First thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the City of Cleveland City Council. Council President, this is the first time in the history of the City of Cleveland that we've had community meetings for redistricting. So the Councilman President Blaine Griffith deserves a lot of credit for this. We've had 2 previous meetings that have gone exceptionally well. We've had some incredible questions, comments, and concerns that we have documented. So we've had some fun times with these meetings, and they've been really, really productive. The city charter mandates that the City Council complete a redistricting process based on the results of the decennial census. 2 of our primary goals are to have natural boundaries and keep neighborhoods together. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Mark Salling. He's a geography expert, and he is going to start the presentation. But before that, got to introduce the leader, Mr. Bob Dykes, who's done this for over 40 years of Triad Research Group. Mr. Dykes has worked on 3 previous redistrictings, 1981, 2009, and in 1981 he went from 33 to 21. Then in 2009 went from 19 to 17, and 2013 reduced another 2, and he is back again in 2024 to lead the effort for Triad Research Group. Bob?
Thank you, Kent. I'm Bob Dykes, and it's my pleasure to be here, and my pleasure to have worked on this project in the past. Some people might have described it with another word, but I actually enjoy it. Councilman Harsh gave us some interesting background about why do we do this even? And in deciding why, and in answering that question, you have to look back all the way to our Constitution. Our Constitution, as you know, was a remarkable document in a number of ways, and one of which was that in the Constitution it says Congress shall measure the population of the country every 10 years. Not if it likes to, or if it would pass some law that says it doesn't have to. It's in the Constitution that it must be done every 10 years. So it's really fundamental to our country that we measure the population, and that population is then used to draw the originally to draw the congressional district lines within each state. So that's how far back this process of drawing lines goes, right to the beginning of our country. And it proceeded on along, the congressional districts and city wards and such, all the way down to our time. And as time went along, places like the city of Cleveland grew. They annexed territory. And the population of the wards of the city didn't change much, and they became very unequal. Some wards actually had about twice as many people as other wards did. And no one particularly paid attention until some people in various parts of the country brought lawsuits saying this is not right, that some wards have large populations and some wards have small populations. And one such lawsuit was brought here in Cleveland in the 1970s, and as a result of all of these, the Supreme Court issued a ruling, which I'm sure you've heard the name of, one person, one vote. So the one person, one vote ruling said that basically if you're going to draw districts, those districts ought to have very similar populations. In fact, if you go back and look at the population of Ohio's congressional districts, you'll find that those populations varied by one person. They would be 600,000, 700,000, 800,000, and the difference between them would be only one person. That's how close some people thought you had to draw the districts in order to have one person, one vote. The wards were never that close, but the wards were limited in how far they could vary by about 5%. That is to say, you would take the population of the city, divide by the number of wards, and whatever number you got as an average, you could vary 5% up or down from that number, and that was it, no more. So it was that way, and then, as Councilman Harsh mentioned, the city passed a unique ordinance, a unique charter amendment that tied the total population of the city to the population of the census and the number of wards. So the number of wards depended upon the total. As the total population would go up, the number of wards would go up. As the total population of the city went down, the number of wards would go down. And that's in fact what has happened, is that the population of the city has decreased some, and we've had 17, and the threshold for 17 this time around was 375,000. And as the councilman said, we only have 372. And so therefore, we're removing 2 wards, not because we want to or someone thought it was politically smart to do so. It's because the charter of the city of Cleveland demands that we do that. So this time around, there will only be 15 wards. So that's where we are today.
All right. Okay, I'd like to introduce Mr. Charlie Slife, Councilman, Ward 17, Jenny Spencer, Councilman in Ward 15, and former Councilwoman Ms. Gray. Just, can you guys recognize this councilman, please? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mark Salling for the program.
Take this too. Yep. Okay, thank you and good evening. Bob stole some of my steam here, but that's okay. Redundancy is good. Redundancy is good because that way you'll remember more. That's what I teach when I teach students, you know, I repeat a lot of stuff because it sinks in that way. So I'm going to talk about the process and data, because I'm a data guy, I'm a mapping guy, I'm a geographer, and I love data and maps. So the new wards will soon be adopted by City Council, and I'll go over the schedule in a minute. The number of wards will change, as Bob pointed out, from 17 to 15 for the November 2025 general election next year, not this coming election, but next year we'll be voting on 15 wards for the city of Cleveland.
There's a whole row up here in the front too for
There's some
everybody.
seats here.
Come on in. There's a whole row up front.
Can you all hear me? I'm usually pretty loud. I'm used to classrooms. Not very much. Okay, I'll use the mic. I'll try to get the mic closer to me. I can hold it, I guess. I guess I'll hold it. Okay, is that better? That's better, isn't it? Okay. So there's a timeline. So we're asking for feedback. So we're inviting everybody in Cleveland, including you, if you've got thoughts about the wards, what kind of neighborhoods, where the boundaries ought to be, or whatever. We're inviting feedback from the population, and I'm going to go over how to do that. But there's a deadline, and that's November 3rd at 11:59. And I'll talk about a method of submitting some ideas about the wards in a minute. So before April 1st coming up, 2025, the council will approve a ward plan. It's a deadline. It's in the charter again. And but before then, we have to have approved wards, sort of established wards, in order for potential candidates to know whether or not they're going to run and where they're going to run, right? We also have the Board of Elections needs to know early so they can change whatever precinct boundaries might be necessary as a result of the new wards. So the work has to be done well in advance of April 1st. It really needs to be done probably in January is what we're thinking, is that we need a final set of wards, okay? So that'll set up for the election in 2025 for the new council wards, and then whoever wins will take office in January of 2026. So we're looking out that far, but there's a lot of work to do between now and then, obviously. Okay. So again, why change from 17 to 15 wards? Well, population. As Bob mentioned, it's driven by the population of the city. And in 2010, 24 years ago, the census counted almost 400,000 people in the city. The city has lost population down to 372 according to the official 2020 census. Now, there might be an undercount in some neighborhoods of the city. I'm sure there is. There's an overcount in other parts of the country and elsewhere. But these are the official numbers, and it was delayed by the COVID problem we had. The census couldn't go out and knock on doors as soon as they normally do. It was a mail-back census form, but a lot of people didn't fill it out, didn't get it, or whatever. And the Census Bureau has traditionally sent people out into the field, knocking on doors. Hey, we didn't get your census form. Could you please complete it? For addresses where they still couldn't get somebody to answer the census, they actually went and talked to neighbors, asked how many people live in that household over there. So they tried to fill in the data as well as they could. But there's still an undercount. We know there's an undercount, but it's the official data. There are no other authoritative data out there on the population, and you'll see how it's distributed in a moment. So it's what we have. It's what we have to use. And if there were somebody who wanted to challenge whatever the boundaries are that are eventually adopted, if we didn't use the official census data, that's one argument that the ward plan that would be adopted by council is invalid because you didn't use the official data. So we have to use the 2020 census. We know that there's been population change since 2020, but there's no census that gives us definitive population numbers for the detailed geography that we need to draw those boundaries. There is something that the census produces which is based on a survey, only a sample, only certain households got this form called the American Community Survey, and it's a relatively small percentage of the population, maybe 15% or so, got this thing, but they try to then from that estimate some demographic characteristics and that sort of thing. So things like poverty rates or other kinds of information is available to be used if we think that it's useful in drawing those boundaries. But it can't be the official population data to create those words. It's only the 2020 census. Okay. So the change was 24,000 from 2010 to 2020, a 6% loss in population. Shouldn't be surprised. City of Cleveland's been losing population for decades now, so this is not a change in the trend. So the charter that Bob mentioned, is one of the sections is shown right here. There's a table that I captured, put it right in here. So the number of words shall be an odd number between a maximum of 25 words and a minimum of 11 words. Using the following table that reflects a ratio of 1 word for every 25,000 people. That was the principle used. So you can see that we're jumping down from 17 to only 15 words because our population now is between 325,000 and 375,000. So it's mandated in the charter that we have to go down to 15 words. So it also a quote from the charter is, the word so formed shall be nearly equal in population, composed of contiguous and compact territory, and bound by natural boundaries and streets. So we'll get to that. So the general principle in local redistricting, like wards, is that you've got to be within 5% plus or minus for each ward in population of the average ward population. So you can be 5% below the average and 5% above the average. That's a range that all the wards populations have to be a final plan. There are other things to consider, like what's called spatial contiguity. In other words, you can't have a ward with a piece over here in the city and several streets away there's another piece of it over here. It all has to be one area. And compactness is to be considered. Compactness is really an indication of what we call gerrymandering, because gerrymandering can be done so that you want to create a political area that will capture an area far away from the heart of the neighborhood of the ward. So you might build an area that sort of links to an area of the community that you want to capture as part of that ward. And that wouldn't be very compact. You'd have this arm reaching out to another neighborhood, right? And it would be obvious by looking at the map of that ward that it's not very compact. So compactness is an indication that something is going on to change the boundaries to be less compact. And communities of interest. So communities of interest means really, in this case, neighborhoods. Trying to keep neighborhoods together is an objective. It's not always going to be possible. There are more neighborhoods than 15 in the city of Cleveland. And they can't all be put together nicely and fit into one ward in some way. Some neighborhoods are going to get split by ward boundaries. It's inevitable. First of all, we don't all agree on what neighborhoods look like or what they are. Okay? There's some maybe common understanding in those communities, those neighborhoods, along those streets, but it's not definitive. So we're going to try to come up with wards that do respect what people think of as their neighborhoods, but it's not going to be perfect. Just expect that, okay? But you can have your own input on that, as we'll talk about in a bit. So the other thing is that the Voting Rights Act of 1964 says that you've got to offer an opportunity for minorities where there's sufficient numbers of them to be able to be in a district in which they can elect a representative, okay? And if you don't have that, if you disperse your minority, your African Americans or your Hispanics or whatever, in some way to cut up that community, the federal Department of Justice may say something about that and bring suit against the city for doing that. So you've got to obey the Voting Rights Act. So the population of the current 17 wards, the average is 21,900, almost 22,000. And the high and the low is right there. If you respect that 5% high and low, 23,000 down to 20,800 or so. But if you look at the 17 wards that we have now and look to see whether or not they are within that plus or minus 5%, the ones that have this red under means that they're too low. in population. The ones that are blue are a little over, perhaps, and then there are only 3 that are in the right range. So in other words, it was obvious that we had to do something about the distribution of the wards. So when you have 15 wards, the average is 24,842, and as a high, you can't go above 26,084, and as a low, you have to have 23,600. So that's the range of population that we must have for the 15 wards in the city. Okay? Okay, so let's look at data and census geography. So these are the current 17 wards. Okay? And if you look at the census blocks, and I'll talk about census blocks are units of geography, and I'll show you another map in a minute that'll make it clearer, are units of geography that the Census Bureau provides population data for. And that's the data, the block data, that we need to use to add up blocks in a neighborhood to get to that population criteria in that range, plus and minus 5%. So these are census blocks. It's hard to see them here. So let's zoom in to a neighborhood. And you can see these are the streets, and they're labeled. You probably can't read them, and I'm sorry about the lighting in here. Maybe we should have started later when the sun went down. Those are streets. So what are blocks? Blocks are the areas that are bounded by usually four streets. Could be 3 streets, like a triangle. But usually they're rectangular in shape, census blocks. So when you look at the blocks, it's those lines. So there's population in each one of these blocks. There's a whole bunch of blocks in here. I don't know how many of them there are, a couple hundred maybe, or at least 100 in this area. Those are census blocks. Those are the building blocks of creating a boundary for a ward. Okay? So here are the populations in those wards. I know you can't see them very well, but take my word for it. There are numbers in there. So in here between, for example, East 89th Street on the west and East 90th Street here on the east, and bounded on the north by Cedar Avenue, and I don't know the street name, it didn't print here, but whatever, this is a census block. And the Census Bureau counted up from the housing units in there and the people that responded to the 2020 census and adding anything that the field workers could collect, added up to 120 people. Now there's a lot of commercial stuff in here, so we wouldn't expect to see very high population numbers in these blocks because there's a lot of other land use other than residential land use, right? But the Census Bureau counted 120 people here. They counted 169 in the block just to the east, et cetera. So you can see, and some blocks have 0 because maybe they're part of the clinic or they're part of a railroad area, or they're commercial entirely or industrial. Lots of reasons why there are 0 populations in some of these blocks. If you overlaid this on top of a Google map, you'd see that, in these areas where there's 0, they're really unpopulated areas. They have other land use, not residential, okay? So those are blocks and the populations that you need to start building wards. All right, so I'm going to jump to another slideshow. Now, what we want to do is give people an opportunity, not just here tonight, to talk about what they think. What? It's not working? No signal? Oh, because probably I didn't start it. Hold on. Maybe that will work. Yeah, okay. Thank you. So tonight's an opportunity for you to get up microphone and say something, but we also want to provide an opportunity for, council does, for you to submit things by email, ideas, thoughts, whatever, about the wards and the redistricting process at this email address, maps@clevelandcitycouncil.org, and you'll see that email address a couple times tonight. Also, this PowerPoint show is also available at the city's website, council's website. So one thing that some people do throughout the country, and in fact in Ohio we did this, is use an application that's on the internet. It's free. And relatively speaking, I know it's not totally this way, but relatively speaking, easy to use. And so when we did the congressional and the General Assembly, the Ohio House and Senate redistricting a few years ago, there were a lot of people that submitted plans of those districts using this application called Dave's Redistricting App, or DRA, on the internet. It's free, you have to sign up, and then you can use it to draw boundaries of districts or wards. And then you can save that, and you can send that plan to City Council at that web address, email address that's there on the screen. So it's not something that everybody's going to use. We know that. Some community groups, CDCs or other neighborhood organizations, for example, that have a staff particularly, might and probably will use this application and submit their ideas about what the word should look like. So there are people out there who will use this. We know that. And maybe somebody here in the audience tonight. I don't know. But I'm going to go through it to show basically how it's done. And for some of you, it's going to be boring. It's going to be too technical. I understand that, and I apologize. But for those who are interested in doing it, I hope that it's useful. So this is not a complete guide to how to use this thing, but it's enough to get you started, I hope. And there are a lot of things in the application, in the software, in the app, if you will, that I'm not going to talk about tonight. It would take too long. So the deadline on submitting whatever thoughts you have, including any maps of the wards that you want to create, is again Sunday, November 3rd by midnight. Okay? So when you open up Dave's, you get a map of the United States like this. And by the way, this application, DRA, is being used locally to help citizens draw boundaries of wards or county council districts and suggest these to the leadership of the city or the county. In some places, they're going even further than that. But this is a very popular way to get citizen contribution or ideas about what the districts ought to look like. It's very democratic, okay? It's a great application if you're able to just go in there and do it. Again, I know not all of you are going to want to do it, but some of you will, I hope. We want feedback. All right. So it opens up and it looks like that, and then you have to log in if you don't have a login. So there's a place. Oops, I jumped ahead. There's a place up in the upper corner. I know you can't see it. It's got a red circle around it where you create an account, or if you have an account, you log in. And if you've created an account, you can quit after you're working on something for a while and you get tired. You're going to go to sleep. You're going to have dinner or whatever. You can always go back and reopen it, and it'll know who you are, and it'll bring you back to where you left off when you were working on an idea about what the word should look like for Cleveland. Okay? So you log in or whatever right there. And then once you're in, there's, again, up in that corner, there's something that says Maps, and you'd click on that, and you'd be given a choice of what geography you want to make a map for. And you'd be able to pick Cleveland as what you wanted to create your wards for. And so the first thing you have to do is say, yeah, I accept the conditions. Again, it's free, it's confidential, etc. And this is where you simply log in down here or establish your, I know you can't read it, I'm sorry. So once you're in there, you click on this Maps thing, it says Maps, and then that'll bring up, and I'm diverting a little bit. So once you've created a map that you're working on or you're finished with, and you go back into Dave's Redistricting app, it'll take you to whatever maps, and you can create more than one. But here's one where I was playing around just for this demonstration purposes, and I called it My Cleveland Wards, because you'll be able to name it. You could call it My Wards 1, and then go create another one, My Wards 2. And then you didn't like those two, and you can try again, and you can call it My Wards 3, whatever, okay? So, but it shows you what your things are, and then you just click on that and go back, and it would start you where you left off on that map. So when using DRA for the first time, you would click on a new map. That's up here. You click on a new map, and that brings up another little window here that you've got to complete. Well, it wants to know, well, what are you going to call this thing? So it says, okay, well, what is it? What state are you working in? What kind of a plan is it, et cetera. I'm going to show you more detail, and it's going to be a complicated slide with lots of arrows and stuff. Bear with me. This is that same form that you just saw over here. And I'm showing you, you put in your name over here, and I called it My Cleveland Wards. And then you have to say, yes, it's Ohio. There's a drop-down list. You could pick Louisiana if you wanted to, but we're talking about Cleveland and Ohio, right? So you say Ohio. It needs to know what geography. Where am I going to give you data for? It needs to know what data that you're going to be using. And so you'd say that, and then on the plan type, you'd click Other and pick Communities, because Cleveland is a community, or a city, maybe it says city, I can't remember, but it would be obvious. And then you'd get a drop-down list, and you'd be able to go find Cleveland in Ohio. Cleveland's in Ohio. And there'd be a list of all the cities in Ohio, and you scroll down until and it's alphabetical until you find Cleveland, and click on Cleveland, and it says, okay, I'm going to give you data and maps to work with for Cleveland. That's what the software does. But it thinks you've got 17 wards, but we're only going to do 15, so you also have to change where it says district count right here from 17 to 15. Just type it in there. And then you say go or apply. And what you get is a map, bare map, no wards. These are precinct boundaries that you see on here. You can see them, you probably can't, sorry. And you've got components of this web page. This has got a list of all your 15 wards. And you could click on one of these over here and say, I'm going to start working on number 1. Or you could start number 15. You know, it's up to you. You'd click on it, and you'd start the process of building the map using either precincts or blocks. So here's another example where I've picked number 1, and it says district details number 1, and I'm going to start adding population to the map, which is over to the right, which I'm covering up because I've got some text going on here. So make sure you also, before you get started on building wards, if you're going to work with this thing, there's a little thing down here called overlays. You click on that, and you want to make sure under map you put down streets so that you can find where you are, because the blocks aren't numbered. You don't know what blocks, what block, but the streets are on there if you click streets. So now you'll know where to go in the city to pick the areas you want to start working on for a ward. Okay? So this is a street map with blocks on it for the southeast part of the city. And I started in the southeast part of the city because I want to be able to start with a ward in a corner and build the second ward more towards the center of the city. And maybe I want to go up and pick another corner of the city in the northeast, maybe in the Collinwood area, and build another ward up there and and maybe also on the west side over near the airport, and start building another ward over there and have them all meet towards the center, because you're going to have to play around with those data and those blocks in order to get all the populations of the 15 wards, if you're going to complete it, to the right range. That's the objective, right? Okay. So what I've done is I've gone in and I've selected, let me back up. The goal is to assign precincts or blocks, you can pick either to start with their populations to the 15 wards, such that all the wards are within that 5% average of the population, right? We've been saying that several times. And so over here, there's a place where you can pick either precincts or blocks. And if you pick precincts, when you click on the map, to add that area, it'll add those precincts you clicked on to the ward you're starting to work with. And you'll see the population numbers adding up in that ward. So that's over here in what's called the district selector, where you start, you pick the word you want to work on, and as you pick areas on the map, whether it's the precincts you're adding together or the blocks, you start seeing a color that's in that word that you're assigning, and it corresponds to the color in this table over here, sort of reddish pink. Okay, the specific precinct or block population data is also available if you sort of hover over the area. It'll come up with a little thing called the precinct details or block details, so you can see the populations that you're looking at over here. I don't know that you really need that comment, but so the ward population changes as you add precincts, or blocks to that ward you're working on. And there's a column here of deviation, and you want to make sure that if you're looking to get in that plus or minus 5%, that the deviations are between 1242 and plus and minus 1242. So you want all these numbers here eventually to be between plus 1242 and minus 42. So if you're going to do this, you'll get this slideshow as a PDF, and so you can look at this, and when you work on it, you can say, well, how do you do that again? You go back to that slide. Okay. All right. Starting with the precincts is faster. That's why you should probably start with the precincts, because it takes a whole block of blocks in a precinct. The precincts are larger than blocks. But then maybe you have to subtract a block because you've gone over the population, so you want to delete a block from that ward. There's something up here called the erase, and if you click on that, then whatever you click on the map, it'll take that out of that ward. Okay, so you're adding and subtracting either precincts or blocks to build the population of a ward. Okay? All right. So you use this paintbrush thing to click on. When you want to click and add blocks or precincts, you have to click on this first, and then you go to the map and you start clicking in neighborhoods where you want to add those blocks or precincts to that ward you're working on. You work on one ward at a time. You can jump out and start working on number 2 or 5, but if you haven't finished, you need to go back eventually and get back to number 1 where you started, for example. Okay. So this is an example of a page where you've got part of the city over here, the southeast part of the city. I've added up these blocks or precincts into Ward 1 so far. The population is only, I can't read that, 2696 or something so far. I need to get a lot more. I need to get up to around 25,000, right? So I need to keep adding precincts or blocks to build up that first ward. Okay, so you zoom into the area. You can zoom in further, zoom out, those kinds of things like you can like with Google Maps, for example. It's like working with anything like that. So you select the ward number, like I said before. You can work on Ward 1, number 5, whatever, and you keep adding. This is called the brush up here, and you can brush over the area and start adding up those areas to that ward. Okay. So, and then you can see the population changes as you do that. And the color corresponds to the key over here to what's on the map. So you'll have red areas, blue areas, green areas, and those will be your different wards. Okay? It's fun. For somebody like me that likes maps and data, believe me, I like doing this. Some of you may not, I understand, but some people might. Hopefully we will get people that like doing this and will participate in this, we're hoping. Okay, so you keep adding up the blocks or the precincts to get a population that's in the right range. Then you move to another area and start building the next ward, or you can come back later and finish, right? I talked about that before. There's another important thing that you can look at in Dave's redistricting. There's next to the maps thing that I talked about before, right next to it, there's another thing called statistics. If you click on that, you'll get some good data to look at. What I mean by good data. So I know these numbers you can't see because of the shading, but also because they're too small. I get it. But let me just say, over here, there's a population column. So here you'll see whatever the ward populations are that you've built will be over here in this column. And if you want to see what the Republican-Democrat mix is in each ward, that's also over here, the partisan lean. So it'll tell you what the percent Democrat and Republican or other is in these 3 columns right here. And because all the wards, as we said before, have to be contiguous. You can't have pieces of one ward here and then way over on the other side of town or something. It has got to be all together. This tells you whether or not you've got any blocks that are out of place. So if they're all green checks, you're good. Okay? If you see one that's not a green check, you need to go find the block or blocks that are not contiguous with that particular ward. Okay. And you can download the data if you want. If you're a data person, download it to a spreadsheet or whatever. And then you return to the map and keep working. So that was the statistics thing that you could click on. So if you want to stop and return later, you log out, you can log out, you log back in, you see that whatever maps you've been working on, you click on them, and it'll bring you right back to where you were, right? Okay, and it brings you right back, like I said. That's what that's supposed to tell you. So once all 15 wards are populated in the appropriate range of populations, you should save the map and copy the web link. There's a web link at the top. Copy that. You know how to copy web links, hopefully. And then you'll paste that when you go into email, and you can write something. You say, here, I'm submitting this information. And then below that, you can paste that web address in, and then when you email that to maps@clevelandcitycouncil.org, we will get that email, and we can go and look at your map and evaluate it and see how we can use it. We're looking for that feedback, okay? We want your opinion. And that's how to do it. I'll hold questions till later if you don't mind. So make sure you've done the following things. Number one, we want you to do a completed plan for the whole city. Because if you create just one ward, it probably is going to have to get changed because somebody else is, or we are drawing, or council is, drawing wards nearby or adjacent that need to be using some of your blocks, or we need to give more blocks to whatever you built in order to reduce the population of that ward that, you know, is nearby. So it's an interactive process. So ideally, you'd produce a map of the whole city, all 15 wards. We know you may not want to do that or not be able to do that. Okay, we backed down. We originally said we're only going to look at the maps if they're for the whole city, but we'll at least look at it and see what it tells us, okay? And try to evaluate whether or not we can use that information. No guarantees. There are no guarantees. We'll try to incorporate or at least look at and evaluate whatever is sent. And so will City Council. When we talk about us, I'm talking about you know, the consulting team. We're going to look at it first, and we'll also share that with people at Council, and so that they can see what is being said. It's also going to go out on a public website. So the council can look at whatever you're suggesting, as well as all the other citizens that want to go in and look at it. Okay? So nothing secret here. We're being totally transparent as much as we can about what people are saying and what they want. Okay. If you're going to submit a map using DRA, you need to, before you copy and that web link and send it in that email, lock it so that if we get it, we can't go in and change it, or nobody else, no other citizen can go in and change your map. We don't want to change your map. We want to see what you've got to say. So you have to make sure it's locked so nobody can mess with it. And that's a little lock thing button up here that you just click on first, and then copy that web address and email it with your comments. Okay? So again, the populations have to be plus or minus that 5%. I've said that 3 or 4 or 5 times. Now, in addition to population, there's other things to consider. You've got to consider racial and Hispanic populations in this city. We have substantial numbers, obviously, of those two populations. And the Voting Rights Act says you've got to consider making sure that those populations have adequate chance to elect representatives of their choice. But there are other populations in the city that don't constitute those high numbers, percentages, that you may also want to, look at. And that table under the details will tell you how many Asians there are, for example, and some other racial groups, American Indians, etc. And so you might want to look at that table to see what your wards are including in those populations. And maybe you want to decide, well, I know there are more Asians in this neighborhood. Maybe I should change my ward boundary to capture more of Asiatown or wherever you think the Asians might be, for example. Okay? So we want you to be aware of those things. And the plans link, again, sent to the same email address that I've been talking about all along here. And the deadline, again, is Sunday, November 3rd, 11:59. Now, there are some other things that you might be able to use if you're really interested in using Dave's. And there are some videos, some tutorials out there, some YouTube things that some of them are only 5 minutes, some of them are 20 or 30 minutes. And I've listed a few here, but you can also just Google Dave's Redistricting app tutorials, and you'll get a whole bunch of things to go look at and use. Okay, and I think that's it.
We're going to pass the microphone, do another little talk, but just because we're all friends, I'll let you know that the guards are up 2-1 in the bottom of the third.
Awesome. I'd like to introduce Councilman Richard Starr, Councilwoman Rebecca Maurer, Councilwoman Santana. Are there any other council member here?
Charlie Slythe.
Charlie Slythe, we've already mentioned him.
Jenny Slythe.
We've already mentioned her as well. Yes. Okay,
Oh, Councilman Harsh.
One up here,
that's fine.
one right there. If anybody in the back wants to see, we do have a few more chairs, and unfortunately, the one out there is broken, so please don't grab it.
And this is being recorded, so it'll be out on the city council's website, so you can go and see this. If this is entertainment for you, you can go home and watch this again.
Thank you. We're going to have questions and concerns. Come up to the microphone, please, and state your full name. Thank you very much.
If you guys want to form a line, we can just do it right here. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. You good? Cool.
Thank you very much. My name is Melissa Miller-Sedlock. I'm the Assistant Director of the Jefferson Puritas West Park Community Development Corporation, and I'm also a resident of West Park. I went to the meeting on Tuesday night. I appreciate this opportunity to do the maps. I thought it was fun. I also have a GIS background, so I guess that's why I thought it was fun. I did not think it was necessarily the simplest map to do, and I just know, and that you've acknowledged that, but there are residents who come to our office on a daily basis asking for help with very basic applications online, and I know that this will be very difficult for a lot of our residents to do. It's available, but it's not necessarily completely accessible, which limits the amount of input. That being said, I am blessed, and I understand that I am privileged, and I acknowledge that, for being and working in a part of the city that has very little residential decline over the past several years. We've been a very stable neighborhood, and that's been great. I started my map with precinct maps on the far west side of Cleveland. Looking at the current 2 wards that represent the far west side of Cleveland, they cannot go north, they cannot go south, they cannot go west without annexing suburbs. The only place would be to go east. Us in Ward 16 as Jefferson Puritas, which our lines match the CDC lines, we needed to give up a few hundred, a few thousand people in order for us to have the map work for that. And Ward 17, just to the west of us, had to gain a few. I started with the precinct map. In that precinct map, I changed 1 precinct, which actually allowed us to better follow the natural boundaries that already exist between the 2 wards. And they are well within the range of the plus or minus. They are both within 800 and 400 of the actual number. I did that, and I have done the rest of Cleveland. I'm still working on the far east side. It's not easy, but on the far west side, it is. It is very easy. It is 1 precinct that needs to change. That keeps our compact neighborhoods compact. That keeps our contiguous neighborhoods contiguous, and that keeps West Park, our community of interest, together, and the way it's been for many years. So I would like to continue to advocate for that line, that 1 precinct switch between the 2 wards. Maybe it's a different precinct here or there, but that to be the only changes between the boundaries between 16 and 17 without changing the eastern boundary of Ward 16 at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you need time, is like a max on comment?
No, let him go. We'll cut him off.
Good evening, all. I'd like to thank Council President Blaine Griffin for affording the community this opportunity. It's very important. Mr. Sykes, you and I worked on maps many years ago. You're not going to remember me. but with Jay Westbrook when he was council president. And I appear tonight on behalf of Jose Feliciano, who's the president of the Hispanic Roundtable and its members. And my name is Jose Villanueva. I'm a former judge of the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas, where I served for almost 30 years. I retired in 2016, and I'm very happy. I was raised in the city of Cleveland on West 41st Street in the Clark-Fulton area. Our ward was represented, this is a little bit of history, Bob, in succession by council members Michael Climaco, Benny Bonanno, and Barbara Pringle. And for many years, I was a constituent of Councilman Jay Westbrook, who eventually became council president, and all were dedicated to their constituents. The Hispanic Roundtable recognizes the importance of dedicated council members, such as those mentioned, to the vitality of our neighborhoods. It is perhaps the most important job in local government. We anticipate that in redrawing ward boundaries, the leadership will conduct a fair process, and it certainly appears that way. And these public hearings and our opportunity to participate in them is a welcome step. Now, I have a statement submitted on behalf, oh, thank you, you're so kind. No problem. Submitted on behalf of the Hispanic Roundtable, and specifically Jose Feliciano, their chairperson. The Hispanic Roundtable is a volunteer, grassroots civic organization dedicated to serving and empowering Cleveland's Hispanic community. We have historically and consistently engaged in a community process in which we convene the entire community at a convention and obtain input to set up our community agenda. One of the pressing issues identified in the last convention on September 21, 2024, when we celebrated our 40th anniversary, was a representation of Hispanic residents in our city government. Cleveland's Hispanic population is 47,730, or approximately 14% of the city's population. On the west side, that number rose to 23.3%, up from 19.9% in 2010, and is rising. Even with contracting from 17 to 15 seats, it is time for a second Hispanic influence ward to be drawn. Currently, we have only one Hispanic council person representing Ward 14. Councilperson Santana is here. I'd like to recognize her. In Ward 14, 41.8% of the population is Hispanic. However, Hispanic residents are spread across several wards, with 6 of these wards having a Hispanic population of 15% or more, and only Ward 17 is below 10% of the population being Hispanic. As a result, the Hispanic community vote is diluted. Despite these numbers, we have only one seat designated as a Hispanic influence district. We propose that the city redistrict the wards to create 2 Hispanic influence seats. The first should be approximately 40% Hispanic, while the second should be close to 35%. The focus should be on current Ward 14 and expanding into nearby neighborhoods with significant Hispanic populations. Proportionally, there should be 2 such seats on the west side, where minorities are projected to become the majority. Today, 43.6% of the west side is non-white, up from 36% in 2010. This redistricting would allow for a more equitable representation of our community and ensure meaningful opportunities for the election of 2 Hispanic council members. We are eager to work with the city to determine the exact boundaries for these new districts. We will submit a redistricting proposal within the time portal that the City Council has scheduled. The Hispanic Roundtable is committed to being a responsible partner in this process and helping ensure our community's growing presence is fairly represented. The Hispanic Roundtable thanks you for considering this important matter. Again, I submit this on behalf of the president of the Roundtable, Jose Feliciano, and its membership, and I thank you very much for your courtesies and
Thank you.
openness.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So will you email that to that web address? Is that email?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, young lady.
Hi.
Your name?
Oh, I'm Sabrina Otis. So this is what I want to say. First, I was bothered with the census in 2020, and I was very vocal because I wrote a lot of emails to the city of Cleveland. I was bothered because I watched census takers walk up and down streets in Ward 15, and they weren't knocking on doors, and they weren't finding out who lived in those houses. And so when you talk about your census and the numbers, I doubt the numbers. I doubt them because we have a lot of homeless, and so who counted them? I doubt it because there are a lot of domestic violence victims who are hiding. Who counted them? You also have a lot of people who are in homes but can't be counted because they're not supposed to be there. Who counted them? So when we're redrawing lines, how are we really drawing them? Because you have a whole lot of people who haven't been counted in the city of Cleveland. When we talk about their small populations and communities, I'm looking at houses, and houses look like they're about to blow apart because there's too many people in them. I am bothered when we're talking about taking away because numbers look really small and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm looking at houses and I'm driving down streets, and you got 10 cars at a house, but you got 40 people in the house. But census say on that street, there's only 100 people on that street. How's that possible? I am concerned, and before you guys start redistricting, somebody needs to do some backlogging and verification. I really would like it to be true. I would like to know it's honest. Everything that's in black and white is not always true. Sometimes things that look right are wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Janice Wald.
Were you gonna comment?
No,
Okay.
if, we're all right.
I apologize, I didn't know if
Thank
you were
you.
trying to
We'll
comment.
take that information.
Thank you very much.
My name's Janice Walter. I live in Ward 16. I have questions. Who's going to actually decide this, you or council? This-
Council.
Council will. Okay. And does the council person decide where he'll lose or gain?
This process, we have talked to all 17 councilmen, and they have their input, and then they will vote, take a final vote on the maps. Council will, as a whole.
Collectively.
Okay, so
All the councilmen will decide where all the lines go.
okay.
But input to them is important.
Okay, and if it's all done by population, then there wouldn't be a lot of changes in some of the wards. Because if they have the right number, there shouldn't be any changes, correct?
Maybe, but it may depend on what changes are necessary in nearby wards.
Yeah, let me give you an example. Suppose you had a ward that was okay, and the ward to the east of it had too many people, and the ward to the west of it didn't have enough. So the ward that had the right number would have to give that didn't have enough, some of its population, and then replenish itself from the ward that has too many.
Okay.
So it can be possible that even if you have the right number, your ward will still change.
Okay, and those two council persons could decide on their own
No.
what they're
no.
going to give or not
The
give up?
The entire council votes on all the lines.
Have you ever seen Survivor?
No.
The
No.
17 of us walk up with a stick and flame, and we decide which two to snuff at.
Okay, and so right now you have no map?
No, ma'am.
No map. And once the map is drawn, will the councilman have a chance to talk to his constituents again?
Yes,
To
he will.
ask them after
Yes,
the
he
map
will.
is done? Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, thanks for having us here. I'm Joe Michula, I live in Ward 11. I live in Ward 11, my name's Joe Michula, and I'm just asking that you adhere to natural boundaries. Last time this was done, it seemed like it was slating councilmen that they wanted to get out of the council. And it's going to be tough. It's a dog eat dog, I understand that. But we, the citizens, deserve the best map possible. And while I have the speaker, I'd like to ask all the council people here to vote no on the gas station. No cherry picking your pedestrian overlay where you want it. That's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say this again. This is the first time in the history of Cleveland City Council that citizens' input is being taken. This is a first, and the council president needs to be, I think we all need to give him a hand, personally, publicly, for doing this. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Gerald Houston, and I have a business in Ward 1. And the young lady stated something that piqued my interest just sitting there. I believe we did the consensus in 2020 around COVID time.
Mm-hmm.
So when COVID hit, it was pretty much ineffective of trying to do the consensus, right?
Correct.
And
it delayed it.
It delayed it, but it also prevented people from, participating in it because a lot of people were dealing with COVID and different issues in quarantine, correct?
I don't know. I know they
Okay.
had difficulty. It took a long time before they finally were able to complete it.
Well-
Get the data out.
Well, it's kind of hard to really gauge that if we're going by consensus, and a lot of things could interrupt that. Okay, and the reason we're here is because the population in the city of Cleveland has dwindled down, correct?
That's correct.
And how are we going to really balance that if we don't have the population in these wards that you guys are talking about? When you're saying bridge certain wards together, a lot of them are on barrels of Maple Heights, maybe Shaker, different parts of the region. We can't go any further. The only place that we can really go is the inner city of the east side. And that's Mr. Stars and I believe House John. No, I'm just saying those are when we look at the map, right, I understand it's not, not anything towards you, but when we look at those maps, those are the areas that's being most impacted by it because those are the low residence areas. So I'm just trying to see how do we balance that and do it correctly, because it's mainly on the east side, and it shouldn't really affect the west side at all because they're kind of populated in most of the areas based on the population numbers. So I'm just confused at how this process is going to take place. I do understand that we hired an independent company to come out and geographically do this for us, so I'm interested in seeing whether their results and when we have those results. And I'm glad that you're giving the public input about this, and I hope that you guys take all the consideration of all the citizens because we are taxpayers and we deserve proper representation on all levels. And I appreciate you guys' efforts on everything that you do wholeheartedly, so hopefully we'll get this right for everyone in the community.
Well, you have an opportunity to draw your own map. You can do what we're doing.
That's correct, but at the end of the day, if we just spent $100,000 on taxpayers' dollars for an independent company to draw it, then, that doesn't make sense to me.
Once there's a draft plan, you'll have an opportunity to look at it, comment on it, talk to your council.
Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Armstrong. I live in Ward 15. So I'm going to talk about compact wards. So I'll just speak up.
Okay.
Here's
But,
Ward
Mike, you can take the mic off because
All right.
the TV camera needs.
All right, Ward 11 has a very narrow section that kind of embeds into my neighborhood in Ward 15. This was done so that the prior council person who resided in that section of Ward 11 could actually reside in the ward that she was going to represent, of which is actually not required. A citizen of Cleveland, as long as you're a citizen of Cleveland, you can run for council in any ward that you want to. So that also kind of brings up where council this week supported issue 1, a statewide measure regarding gerrymandering. And just very briefly, and then I'll get to a main point, it says extreme gerrymandering prevents Ohioans and Cleveland citizens from having the fair representation they deserve, allowing politicians to manipulate and rig district boundaries to secure their own power and diminish the influence of voters. So I'm hoping they don't do something again like we saw regarding Ward 11, but they may have the opportunity to do so, and I hope that they do not. I know the current Ward 11 councilperson resides in Ward 16, Precinct L, and I'm just asking that the boundaries not be manipulated or rigged for one councilperson's benefit. And then just lastly, also even looking at Ward 10 on the east side, this might be one we could just eliminate. It's very narrow, and basically it runs from the Euclid boundary, approximately like east 210th Street, all the way almost to downtown Cleveland, East 40th Street. So that might simplify things, just getting rid of that one and then draw your map. So just in summary, I'd just like to see more compact maps and no special favors.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Malak Rashid. I grew up in Cleveland, lived in Cleveland, work in Cleveland. My question is around, and I apologize because I'm still really learning about like what redistricting really means. And although I work in the nonprofit sector, I am still like, this is new, and I thank Cleveland City Council for hosting these meetings because I've learned a lot already. I work very heavily in the newcomer space, immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, and on average, greater Cleveland itself, Cleveland proper, has an influx of 1,600 to 2,000 new refugee arrivals to Cleveland. Majority of them do stay, and that doesn't account for secondary migration. So green card holders or foreign-born American citizens who come from other states because they hear from all their relatives that it's a great place to live. And I think about how many of them live on the west side, and majority of them end up either, if they initially resettle on the east side, they try to find their way to the west side just because of access to cultural resources. When thinking about the population kind of cap that you mentioned earlier, that little over 25,000, and how this shapes the ward, I just think about like redistricting just impacts the lives of everybody, and it's going to be hard to meet the needs of everybody, but these are real lives, and whether they're new arrivals or longtime Clevelanders born and raised, I'm just thinking about how the west side already is super congested, but we also see the trends of what's happening, and new arrivals from other countries is one of the reasons why our population hasn't declined as much as maybe it could be. I do want to echo the community member who said the census was really difficult. I did census work and it was difficult, especially for non-English speakers. We had a lot of people who didn't get to complete it. This process also too, I want to know, like, it isn't also inclusive to people who don't speak English. They can't necessarily get their input on these ward maps unless it's available in multiple languages. But I just wanted to put that out there in the sides of congestion on the west side already, but also when we think about where people move to in Cleveland for immigrants, refugees, and newcomers, the west side will continue to be congested if these maps are not drawn properly. And then that could also be a burden on the community to not have as much resource allocation as possible.
Thank you very much, young lady.
Yes, I'm here today. I was here yesterday, but I'm here today to discuss the map. So I went home and I took the challenge of creating a map, and I actually created a map with 15 wards. But what I did learn is the east side, of course, is where I started. Well, the west side has intact communities, so it was easy to do on that side, as one speaker had said. But when I got on the east side, it got difficult. But the thing is, taking into consideration everything that you said at the other meetings, there's no way that we can move, like the north can move south or the south can move north. So either way it goes, it's going to be bigger. It's going to probably be only 5 big wards on the east side to meet the quotas, all the quotas that we talked about yesterday. That's the east side, because I thought the meeting was going to get recorded yesterday, but I guess it didn't. So we just, we're here today to, it was recorded yesterday?
The meeting's recorded.
Oh, okay, because I was trying to figure out what happened to a lot of elders was asking about that yesterday in the Glenville community. So anyway, so as I was saying, there's no way to do it because all the population loss was on the east side. The east side. The east side has less people. And again, like I said, if you try to move if the ones at the north, if you try to move south, you're gonna lose assets. And the same as the south. If you in the south, all the way down there by Ward 1, and you try to move all the way north, you're gonna lose assets. So again, it's gonna end up being 5 wards, and then the wards on the west side, they're intact. So it's not gonna be much movement on the west side because their communities are intact. But all the movement is gonna realistically happen on the east side. So I'm just saying, I did it, I completed, I'm gonna turn it in and see what happened, but that's that.
Thank you very much. That's awesome.
All right, well, we'll see what happens.
Just for everyone's information of any other people from Glenville, it's on TV 20 YouTube. So everyone, it was recorded. The meeting yesterday was recorded. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Chris Martin. I'm curious, like, I don't know that it really actually matters all that much, but I'm curious, how does the current 17 ward map score on Dave's Redistricting's metrics?
I haven't looked at that. That's a good question. I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry, that's an excellent question. I'm going to go home and do that. I haven't actually looked at it. But my guess is not too well. First of all, population's way off.
Yeah.
But I don't know about the partisan mix. I don't know about the African American, Hispanic. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. Because the reason I'm curious, like, a few people, one person tonight pointed out the Scorpion sale in 11. Council President Griffin, I think on the first night, pointed out how long 10 is. The charter mandated that wards be compact when this 17-ward map was drawn, and council decided that this was compact. And so I guess I'm wondering, with the 15-ward map, like, are there metrics in terms of compactness and the other things, especially that we can compare to, on Dave's Redistricting that you are aiming for? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll look at those metrics, as you say. When there's a draft map, we will definitely look at that. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any specifics that you are aiming for?
No.
Okay.
We know it can't be totally compact, so we're going to shoot for as compact as, given other considerations, as possible.
Okay, cool. And then I have a kind of a follow-up question to the questions I was asking yesterday. And I don't really know who the best person to answer. It might be Daryl. I'm kind of wondering when the draft maps gets released, or any really of the council people here, can we get a commitment that the caucus meetings that you will be negotiating these maps will be live streamed? I would love, Council President Griffin has talked a lot about the transparency he's trying to inject in this process. I think that would be a really great show of transparency to live stream those meetings where you will be discussing these maps. So I don't know if there's anybody that can make that commitment here tonight, but that would be my request.
Thank you very much. Hey.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Ariel Renda III. I'm on the Community Relations Board, Fair Housing Board. I'm on the board of Julio de Burgos, community activist and a street corps president. I want you, something that the councilman and I were just talking about earlier at Community Relations, there is a significant undercount in the Latino community, the African American community. You can't do this unless you take that into account and reflect that in the maps that you're going to draw up. Otherwise, you're doing a disservice to the people of the city of Cleveland. I want you to undo the damage that was done in 2000 when the councilman in Ward 4 deliberately cut Buckeye down the middle of the street to get certain community activists and other people out of his hair. And we've been struggling ever since. There should only be one council person that represents Buckeye. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
First, Johnson.
Yes.
Greetings, everyone. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak, council members, residents and everyone who's involved in this endeavor. Just want to say that I hope as we create these boundaries, these new boundaries, that everything is done in a fair way, that it's transparent, and that there's a great deal of integrity that's involved in this process. And just realize that there are communities within these wards that need to stay together. They need to stay intact. There's a lot of history involved in this process. So I'm hoping that people are not left out as we form these new boundaries and borders. But definitely want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for having this opportunity to have some input. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Hardy, Ward 11.
Hi, everybody. Walt Gaychuk, Ward 14. I'm Democrat Ward Leader for 14. This is really to Council and President Griffin. Jasmine Santana is the only Hispanic leader we have. So when you guys are drawing these maps, the Hispanic community is extremely underrepresented. Jasmine does an absolute phenomenal job representing us. But if you guys draw out Jasmine, you're going to have a lot of Hispanics on your asses. So please don't do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else, just let me know if you're, okay, you're after the lady.
Hi, Leslie Bednar, Ward 11. I have some brief, straight-pointed questions. I hope they're clear. About how long does it take a city the size of Cleveland to develop a new ward map? I mean, we have really long-term experience in this room.
Well, it depends on a number of factors. Are there deadlines? I mean, sometimes the city has to do it in a very fast way. For example, if you had had the results of the 2020 census earlier than we did have them, there would have been new wards in the 2021 election. So you can say it's a difference of 4 years, depending upon when the census got us the information. So the city doesn't have total control over how long it takes.
When did they get the certified 2020 census data?
I forget. I think it was September?
2021.
Yeah,
September 2021?
I think that was, am I right, Mark?
I can't remember.
The records on the Census Bureau site, it's not real clear when the city data is clear. Definitely September 2021 was congressional. That was done. And then it had to be a year or less for the municipal parts. My idea is the process, because we've been told that there wasn't time once they got the data in, let's just say, September 2022, to do any of this work. And now we're squished into this timeline that just a week ago, the public was notified of these 3 sessions this week. The people in this room are the people who care about the city. And honestly, we're busy. So are our council people. I understand that. But to wait until October 8th to invite all of us to just 3 little sessions, 2 on the east, 1 on the west, that is disrespectful. And I would like that word passed on. Now, I know that you have given kudos to the council, city council president. Why in the world wouldn't somebody do this at this time, especially in the state of Ohio, after all the heartache and misery we've had with gerrymandering? I don't care what the charter says. It's not a glorious deed that he has done. It's absolute, like, common sense. So all that praise and stuff, I mean, thanks. We're glad to be here. Next question. Once the map is drawn, it has not been truly clear for us in that little pocket of the audience. Once the map has been presented, the recommended map has been presented to council for their vote, which I assume will be at the December meeting, some sort of December meeting. Will there be public sessions like this for us to give input on the map before they vote? Let me reword that. There must be public sessions for those who care to give input on the recommended map. There should only be 1 map at that point. It'll be the map that council has to review and vote on. The city must give a timeline that allows for public input. Point of confusion. On Tuesday night, I watched the recording. It was said then that anybody who wants to make a map has to map the whole city, not just a ward or two. Is that still true? Because tonight it sounded different.
Yeah, last night even, we.
I didn't watch last night. I watched Tuesday night.
Oh,
And Tuesday night, it was adamantly the whole city, not your own neighborhood or ward.
the whole city was what was communicated.
On Tuesday night, but not tonight. Tonight, I heard, no. They said you could do a part of the city or a ward.
This is what happened. A young lady came up there, she had great questions, and she said she's having problems because she doesn't have internet, and she's having difficulty working it. And so last night, we said that if she sent in a single part of her ward, we would look at it. But in actually, totality has to be done for it to be absolutely correct. But for her, we said, send it in and we will look
But
at
I
it.
think the point of allowing a portion is how you empower and engage the people. How many in this room are going to go into that app online and draw a complete city map? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. And yet there's what, like 40 people in here? Can't count that fast. So, drawing maps, even if it's a portion, is one way for us to engage. How else?
Here's part of the problem. Suppose you live on the east side in the Forest Hills neighborhood, and you draw a ward there. You might not leave enough population in Collinwood or too much population in Collinwood.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you.
Let me finish.
Well, that's not the
But
question, though.
But by drawing one ward, you might create a situation that makes it impossible to draw a city map. And so we thought if people draw the entire city, they would understand that when you move the boundary of one ward, you affect all the wards around it.
It's like building a Lego set. I get that. The question is, for the majority of us who will not be drawing any map, portion or whole, what else can we do to get our voice heard?
Say whatever you want, send an email and express yourself about any of these opinions or your neighborhood and that, how strongly you feel about having a ward that represents this particular area. You could describe it by maps, you could.
And we're using the email maps@clevelandcitycouncil.org.
Correct.
Just wanted to say that again. Who's going to be manning that email?
I'll be seeing it, our team will be seeing it, maybe the council people will be seeing it, I guess.
No, we don't have access to that.
Sorry?
We don't have
You don't have
access
access to that?
Then they may not want access to that. That's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, the people who do send their thoughts that way have to know somebody's listening. So I do hope you have a plan of how to respond to every
They will be
single email.
responded to. They will
Great.
be responded.
Great.
I'm gonna
Yes.
read every one of them.
They will be responded.
That's wonderful. All right, and we can also call. I saw a phone number somewhere. Okay, just the email address?
Just the email address.
All right. I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else by show of hands that wants to do public comment? We got one more after this lady. Okay.
Ma'am, I just want to say that you have done well today, doing what citizens should do. Thank you very much for your words. That's involvement. And if anybody else wants to come up and give their say, they should come up now. Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Hallie Minshall from Ward 11. Thank you, council members and passionate City of Clevelanders for coming out. I just have a few questions, I guess. So this map is really through the 2030 census, so it won't go into effect until the end of 25 and essentially be in effect for 5-ish years?
My understanding.
Is that?
That's correct.
Anyone?
It'll be a 2029 election and then a 2033 election.
So 2033.
Census, that's correct.
Okay.
25 and 20.
So it's shorter than the typical period
At least
since
a
we're
year.
delayed?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So how are the resources that are currently split between 17 council members going to be reallocated to 15? Is there just gonna delete that, or are we gonna reallocate to others? And like, what does that mean for the city?
I mean,
Just
I
questions.
don't want to speak out of turn, but I think the general thought is, right now, you would take the same pie and divide by 15 instead of dividing by 17. That'd be the simplest thing. Mostly what we do now, when we went from 19 to 17, we did the same process.
Okay. And so are all of our council members up for reelection in 25?
Yes.
Yes.
As well as the mayor.
Every seat.
Okay. So it's somewhat my understanding that there's some sort of east-west tension with different council members over certain issues, say the West Side Market. How will those tensions come to bear in the creation of a map that's only voted on by U17?
Politics marches on.
Yeah?
I mean, there will be issues in the city forever, and it'll be up to 15 people to make those decisions instead of 7.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Gentleman in the hat was next up. And sir, in the tie, did you want to speak to him too? Okay, then I think you're the last one, I think.
Yes.
Anybody else? And then, of course,
and
we'll
Jim.
give council a moment to.
Yes.
Sorry, we'll give council last.
Good evening. My name is Jean Francis. I live in Ward 11. There's been a lot of great questions tonight. I especially want to give a shout out to the resident in pink. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. I also want to say I really appreciate the younger people in the audience. You guys are future leadership of this city, so thank you for being here. Two quick points I just want to make. As I previously mentioned, I live in Ward 11. I actually live in the part that's titled the Scorpion Tail. I didn't pick the name, unfortunately, but that's what it's called. And it makes things difficult for me and some of my fellow neighbors when issues come up. The very first question that we have to put out on the table is, who's the council person that represents you? And then we can go on to discuss the issue. So to the consultants, obviously that gerrymandering got in, at that point, and I really hope that moving forward, that doesn't really happen again, But I also want to say, I really hope that this leads to a larger discussion, not only with our city council, but also the other leaders that are leading our city in terms of why is the population of Cleveland dwindling. I think that's a very valid question, and I think it's a question that should not be overlooked just by discussing the topic of redistricting and taking from 17 council seats down to 15 council seats. So to all the council members in the audience today and to those who are watching at home, I really do hope that we take the time to set aside meetings where we can actually discuss that topic, as well as maybe even reaching out to people who have left Cleveland and doing 10 to 15-minute interviews with them and asking them, what was your motivation to leave the city of Cleveland? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Last call. Anybody else?
We're almost there.
All right.
7 o'clock.
Good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Roland Muhammad. I'm on the Community Relations Board with the City of Cleveland for 19 years and just started a CDC on Superior Avenue. My question is again about the census, and from what I understand that the root of government is precinct government, and every ward has precinct, and each precinct got a precinct captain or precinct leader. And from my understanding, the precinct leader should know everything what's going on in his precinct. He should know who's living in there. He should know where all the stoves is, all the business, where the hospitals are, where the schools are. So if you truly want an answer, and we're dealing with government, starting at the root, starting at the base, which is precinct government, then the census should go to the precinct leaders throughout the city and let the precinct leaders give the accurate account because that's their job. The precinct leaders then rally behind to try to support the councilman in the ward, as well as the precinct leaders, the one that rally the people in the ward to elect whatever council person they want. So why do then, the government is set up to give us answers and the census make a report, then why doesn't the census then start at the bottom and start with the precinct leaders and get all the information in order for us to have accurate information? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, I'm going to transition us. I'm going to take a little home ward privilege. It is still the Guardians up 2-1 in the bottom of the sixth.
All right.
This is important. I wanted to clarify because I think we should shine a light where there is darkness. Just to be clear, because I've read the charter a couple of times, the gentleman from Ward 1 is correct. You don't have to live in the ward to run. If I wanted to go gather petitions and signatures in Ward 1, and the good people of Ward 1 decided to put me on the ballot and then decided to elect me, I could represent Ward 1 while living here. However, if you live in the ward you're elected in, which is most common, you cannot move out of your ward. You forfeit your seat if you move out of your ward. So I think that some of these things were done to keep people in the ward they had been elected to. Anyway, that's just how the charter works. The other thing is the certification issue. The Secretary of State for Ohio had to certify all these census results, which I remember did not happen until after the election because we were up there at City Hall when they came around with the Secretary of State's official certification putting Cleveland at 372,000. They photocopied it and gave us all a copy of it and said, this is it. Secretary of State certified, we're at 372, this is the new number that we have to use. So the census happened in 2020, certification did not happen before the 2021 election could be underway. So 2022, we got those certified numbers, and that's why we're doing this now for 2025. That's all. I just want to clarify those two couple issues. You gentlemen have Starr, and I'm sorry, I wanted to give all council colleagues an opportunity to speak. I know Councilwoman Spencer wanted to say something, Councilman Starr, Moore, Slife, Santana, just back there. Anybody who wants to come up? Yeah. Okay.
Let me get this down a little bit. There you go. Good evening. I'm Councilman Richard Starr, Ward 5. Thank you, residents, for coming out. I know sometimes you get the notice and you try to adjust. So imagine being a council member when you have to adjust your schedule because things going up. I do want to send regards to our council president who couldn't be here because once again, council is getting thrown under the bus for something we did not have no control of. You catch that if you want to. We figure that out later. But I am one that always think about the facts. Let's not forget when I was in college at Baldwin-Wallace, the people put a charter amendment together and came up with this process. The people put it together and voted to make sure the populations on track from the census is determined on the amount of representation that we have here. Now, I'm a firm believer that the census tract is not the only way to determine population. We know for a fact, and history has shown, that people in urban neighborhoods do not fill out the census. And if you're talking about a global pandemic, I know seniors who said, don't come and bring that COVID-19, that cold, don't you come to my house, don't you open the door. So they too were not filling it out. It's a trust factor, a lack of that we all have dealt with. Mind you, in 08, I was at Baldwin-Wallace in college trying to get my studies together. So what I'm saying is, us as council members, I definitely want to give a kudos to our council president for doing something that hasn't been done. An opportunity for residents to come out as well as draw your own map. Yes, it is hard. Yes, it is difficult. This is difficult for us all. But I also want to state the fact that within that charter amendment, it said the maps have to be drawn by April 1st. So let's not get it twisted as if it's something just getting rushed together, because we still have to figure out what is the best map. You're talking about people's livelihoods as far as residents, as well as council members too, because you're going from 17 to 15, which is some tough decisions that has to be made, but it was a charter amendment that the people put on and asked to do and voted and passed. I wish it was something that we should have done, tried to freeze it or put another charter amendment together, but as the charter states, this is just something that we have to do. So kudos to our council president for stepping up to make sure he get the input. I did some research and I seen past leadership didn't even think about bringing this to the community. They drew the maps, passed it, and kept it moving. And that ain't what our council president is doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to recognize Councilman Danny Kelly at the door. Just say hi. Hey, how you doing, Councilman? He was at this is his third meeting. He was at the first two. Thank you for saying again. Thank you. Spencer.
All right. Thank you. Oops. Star, I'm not putting the mic back up.
You can roll.
I want to take a moment. I don't know if this will be captured on the live stream or on the recording. I'm looking at a full room. This is absolutely incredible. You are honoring us with your time. I couldn't believe it when I walked into this room. Yes, there's a Guardians game on and all, but this was pretty short notice, I have to say. This was pretty short notice, and yet the people of Cleveland are here. I think you are absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. Can we please do a round of applause?
Yes.
I will say, you know, did I introduce myself? I'm so sorry. I'm Jenny Spencer. I represent Ward 15 on council. I'm very proud, and it's an honor to serve the public. And I will echo some of what my colleague Richard Starr said about strides being made for council to be more transparent and to be increasingly so. I think this is a step, but I have to say, and this is me going off script. This is not me speaking as a council member. This is me speaking as your fellow citizen. And I want to say this to the consultants, that we are 2.5 weeks out from a major national and state election with issues at the county level, state level, national level that will absolutely impact the lives, livelihoods, well-being, bodies of our fellow neighbors, safety, health, flourishing of our people. We have a major national election in 2.5 weeks. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. We're here tonight, we're here this week, can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. But would I have recommended that we ask our citizens to do a map-making process in the final 2 weeks with a 2-week deadline before national election? I would not. So that's me totally going off script. I think this is a valiant exercise. I think this is a great tool. I learned a lot tonight in coming. I thank anyone who may choose to spend their time with the map-making tool. Can't put the genie back in the bottle here, but I just want to say that I want, and as a member of council, want to continue to lean in for us to be increasingly transparent, and I know we can do even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilman Harsh, you want to take us away?
Yeah, so thank you everybody for coming out here. I will echo that. If anybody is a Ward 13 resident, okay, well you all know. This is where we do our ward meetings, but you guys usually come to our ward meetings. So second Wednesday of every month, we're in this room at 6 o'clock, spread the word. And I want to thank the great staff here at Estabrook for having us tonight on such short notice. I was asked the other day if there was already a map drawn, and I said, yeah, there's dozens. Everybody's drawn a map. There's dozens of maps floating around out there. They said, is there one sitting in the back room of council with a towel over it that we don't want to talk about? Like, no, there's not. But I can guarantee you this, whatever map comes out, somebody will be upset. There is no way to divide the city into 15 wards that doesn't rock a boat. So get ready for that. It's going to happen. It's natural. It's just the way it's going to roll. We're not going to be able to pull out a 15 ward map that makes everybody stand up and applaud. Thank you for being part of this process. Thank you for your understanding. Thank you for engaging on the front end. The next part is going to be even more interesting, I'm sure. And thank you all for these gentlemen for coming out. We have a combined X amount of decades of experience in demography and map drawing here. So thank you for sharing your expertise with us tonight. There's one last question in the back. Dave's Redistricting is davesredistricting.org, I believe.
Yeah, if you Google just Dave's Redistricting app, you'll find, links to it.
Dave's, D-A-V-E apostrophe S. Nope, wait. Wait.
Information is posted or will be posted on Cleveland City Council's website. That's clevelandcitycouncil.org/redistricting.
You can simply go to clevelandcitycouncil.org/redistricting, or just look for it on clevelandcitycouncil.org. I'm sure we've got a link right there, and I promise you, if a ding-dong like me can use Dave's Redistricting, so can you. I figured it out. You'll figure it out. You mess around with it a little bit. You'll get there. It's a good app. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.